Hello, everyone. Kia ora, bulavanaka, talofa lava, halo, kia orana, and halo keta, and a very warm welcome to this Business Link Pacific webinar, SME Finance in Times of Crisis. Thank you so much for joining us today from wherever you are in the world. Before we get started, I'd just like to make a couple of introductions and go over a couple of housekeeping rules as we move through the webinar. If you haven't already done so, please take a moment to do the short survey. The link to that is posted in the chat box. Your answers will be anonymous, but it will help our webinar presenter with his discussion points today. For the entire webinar, please keep your microphone and camera on mute. This helps us get a good, clear feed to everybody who's watching. If you do have any trouble with that, the controls for the webinar, for the microphone and the camera at the bottom of your screen, you just need to hover at the bottom of your screen and put mute on both of those, please. If you need to leave partway through, that's not a problem. We will be recording the entire webinar today and sending out a recording of that webinar afterwards. There will be one Q&A session at the end. and we do welcome questions from everybody. So as the webinar progresses, please type your questions into the chat box. If possible, tell us your name and which organisation or business you are from. If we run out of time for questions in the Q&A session, we will make a note of your question and email you privately with the answer after the webinar. So for those of you who have just joined us on our webinar series, you may not know too much about the BLP network or the BLP program. So I just wanted to give you a quick refresher of what BLP is all about. We are a Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade private sector development organisation delivered by DT Global. We currently operate in 6 countries: the Solomon Islands, the Cook Islands, Samoa, Papua New Guinea, Vanuatu, and Fiji. We work in partnership with financial institutions, chambers of commerce, and the private sector. And our core objective is to develop a business advisory service provider network in the Pacific region that improves the access of business services to growing SMEs. We do all this by offering 3 main services, which since we launched back in 2017, they've been developed, extended, and tailored to suit the Pacific business sector. We have an online business health check, which helps businesses identify where there might be gaps that could benefit from business advice. We have a business diagnostic, which is carried out by our in-country representatives, and it's a more comprehensive one-to-one version of the business health check. We have a searchable database of over 60 BLP-approved business advisors. All of our business advisors go through a quality assurance process to ensure that they're reliable and experienced. Business mentoring and coaching is also provided by BLP consultants for our business advisors so that they can be the best business advisors possible. We have a BLP Subsidy Scheme, and we offer a 50% subsidy or 100% subsidy, as you may have seen in response to the COVID-19 crisis. There is more information about this on our website. We've also just released the Online Business Continuity Planner, which is a free online tool similar to the Business Health Check that helps identify areas that could benefit from business advice, categories that are specifically around business continuity planning. Our webinar presenter today is Paul Wendland. He's the Deputy Director of Business Link Pacific. Paul is a Senior Project Director, Financial Sector and Enterprise Development Consultant. He has a broad range of experience across Western and Southern Africa, the Middle East, Central and South Asia, and the Pacific. He specialises in SME Finance and financial sector inclusion, managing programs for donors, foundations, and governments in over 20 countries. And he has been the Deputy Director of Business Link Pacific since we began in 2017. He's here today to talk to you about the different ways SMEs in the Pacific Islands can manage their finances in times of crisis, including how to renegotiate loans and gain access to credit. Welcome, Paul.
Great, thanks, Anusha. Appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me on the webinar, and yeah, it's a pleasure. It's I think these webinars are getting better and better. Jen's last week was great on tourism and coming out the other side of tourism, and done some great webinars on cash flow and some of the online tools that we have, which is excellent. So it's great to see everybody joining. I see a lot of familiar faces on the webinar already, so it's excellent. It's great to be here. So yeah, I guess we can get started. Anusha, should I present my screen?
Yes, you can. Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, great. All right, I hope everybody can see that. So thanks everybody for the introduction. This is just a short slide presenting on kind of my expertise and experience. So I will go ahead and get started on all right, so today I really want to go through 4 main areas, mostly talking about SME finance as it relates to the current situation. You know, I really wanted to tackle this specifically for SMEs in the Pacific. Obviously, this is what we do. So I really wanted to take this from the perspective of an SME and make it as practical and as current as I can, focusing on what your current conditions are and the steps that you can take right now to help you with access to finance and your financial situation, and maybe talk about what some of your options are, and also make a bit that this is a discussion as well in the Q&A and the survey, to really kind of get at what can be done now, and then how to prepare for the future, because I think that's what a lot of people are looking towards. I think we're all very aware that SMEs are in a really tough spot in the Pacific. Very little income, very restricted cash flow, significant debt, and we really need to figure out how best to tackle that debt, and how best to work through financial difficulty with access to finance, and some steps we can take internally within your business. So yeah, I just thought I'd just get started. I really want to focus on the first bit, which is assessing your current condition. We've done some webinars on cash flow and some of the things that you can do to fine tune your business and to look at your financial situation. And certainly Business Link Pacific is equipped to help small businesses in the Pacific to do that through our network of service providers, accountants, financial experts, etc., to help you find out what your financial condition is. So to start out with, I think it's best to know the now. So really understand what your current financial position is. Where are you really looking? Where's your current cash position? Looking at your cash flow, not just what you have in the bank, what's in your wallet, but your payables and your receivables. What are your current obligations, and where are your sources of income coming from? And really think hard about that. Right now is a great time to review all of your debt obligations, your financing, your loans, your personal credit, people you may owe money to, your payables, what we call payables. So I think it's really important to really sit down and take a really hard look at where you are and know where you are now. And that's the important thing, is to take a snapshot in time of your current position. The next step you might want to think about is carrying out a cash flow analysis. Cash flow analysis can be a very simple tool, a very complex tool. But to really think about the cash that you have coming in historically, so you may want to look 3 months, 6 months, 12 months historically as to what your cash flow was. And you can do this through a variety of means, and we've talked about this in previous webinars. But you can go that through your bank balances, sit down, look at receipts, look at your business records, and to really think about that cash flow analysis historically. And then obviously your cash flow now, which is probably quite constricted, you want to think about what that's going to look like in another 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. And I know the condition will change as you go. So one of the things you can do is talk to a local advisor to help you prepare that cash flow. Business Link has great advisors throughout the Pacific to help you sit down and do that. And this is one of the things that falls under 100% subsidy scheme is cash flow analysis, business continuity planning, looking at your future cash flow and helping you assess where you are now and where you need to go. So please do check out the portal and talk to your local advisors within the BLP network. The next thing you want to do is think about maybe some financial projections. So financially project where you think you might go based on some realistic scenarios. If you're a tourism business, obviously you're going to be highly restricted in a place like Vanuatu. Even a service provider that's had a number of their businesses drop off because people's priorities have shifted. So they may not be purchasing new websites. You may be a retail business, and your retail business has dropped off of their other cash is been constricted. They're not buying construction materials. There's such a range of businesses, and they all fall under different conditions and restrictions at this particular time. And it's a bit of a domino effect. So looking at where your business is now, and then financially project out based on some realistic scenarios where you might be, and that's really important. The next point I want to make is servicing your debt. Now, your current debt is really important. Obviously for a lot of reasons. You have obligations. You have financial obligations. You owe the bank money. You may have lines of credit. You may have personal credit. You may have car loans. You may have a number of different debt obligations. Sitting down and looking at those debt obligations now, compared to where you're, compare those against your financial projections, compare that to get your cash flow, compare that to your current cash position, and really think about, where you are, where servicing those debt obligations over time, especially 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. Look at the terms around those debts. The next thing is payroll. A lot of governments, obviously here in New Zealand, governments in the Pacific are offering wage subsidies, which are great. It's a great opportunity to keep your employees at least partially paid, keep them on the payroll, make sure that they have some income coming in, because your employees are really, really hard to come by. Employees, as employers, you want to do your best to keep them on the payroll as much as you can. I know a lot of businesses, even here in New Zealand, are cutting staff even after receiving wage subsidies, which is a bit difficult. It's hard to see that happen. Obviously, the governments are trying to prevent that. They're trying to keep cash in the system and employees, on the payroll. So knowing when they'll come back to work, when it's possible, is really important. Having that, one-to-one conversation with employees is important. So in addition to, wage subsidies, look at the other benefits that need to be paid for them. Especially now, people are relying more and more on paychecks. They're looking at healthcare. They're looking at all kinds of costs. It's not just wage subsidies. And really think, going beyond wage subsidies, project how you'll start to reopen and pay some of those payroll costs going forward. So keeping that in mind, including some of those other expenses like healthcare for your employees.
Excuse me, Paul, sorry to interrupt. You've just got, your screen is a bit frozen, your actual presentation screen. Do you reckon you could just stop presenting and start presenting again, and it might fix it?
Is that frozen again still?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Okay. How's that?
Okay, that's better. That's
better. Does that say tighten up?
Yes.
Okay, great. Excellent.
Cool. Thanks.
Well, that's a good segue into my next slide. So, so I think now is the time. I mean, this is an access to credit. This is an access to finance and a finance question. But your finance is woven in your business, and it's the credit that you hold for your business is key. And some people, they leverage quite seriously in their business to be able to run their business. The first step, I think in anything, especially if you're looking at your debt obligations, is to tighten up. And debt, has got many forms. One of which is your payables, but I'll get to that in a moment. You want to manage your receivables really closely. You want to tighten up the time frames for your incoming cash. You want to shorten your receivables turnover, i.e. the time that it takes for you to receive the people who owe you money. As a lender, in effect. You want to tighten up your receivables. You want that cash coming in, and you want to constrict that time. You want to call in that debt as much as you can, which is a bit tricky, because my next point is you also want to renegotiate your payables, your payment terms with your creditors. This could be your suppliers. This could be utilities. It could be any number of things, anything that you owe money to. You want to try to renegotiate those if you can. Obviously, you have both clients and you are a client. And being a client of a supplier is important. That's an important relationship. And as much as you can to tighten that up and to lengthen the time, and maybe get some holidays there in terms of some delays in payment, maybe extending some credit terms for you to continue to receive your supplies, and then renegotiating some of that supply. So you have a bit more flexibility there. I think that's really, really important. So yeah, so that's basically tightening up your payables and receivables. Review your expenses, even in areas that you haven't considered: utilities, phone bills, internet, transport, fuel, inputs, and other supplies. But you want to cut back on the right ones. It's really important that you don't put yourself in a position to put your business at risk because you've cut vital expenses, you've cut vital utilities. But you can look and get creative about this sort of thing. You know, I purchased a house and I'm looking at my mortgage and I'm thinking, how quickly can I pay off my mortgage? What can I cut? How can I put money that I earn onto my debt and to pay that even faster? So looking and tightening up my own cash flow and you know, how best I can be efficient as an individual. And sometimes, especially as their families and as individuals, they're woven into their businesses. Their personal and business expenses are woven together. Now is a good time to review that. Now is a good time to think about, you know, how those two are woven together and where you can trim some expenses here and there. The next point is you kind of want to review your current sales and revenue streams. You know, again, thinking creatively about how you're making money and who you're making it from. You know, are there new markets you can tap into? I know we've, as BusinessLink, you know, we've helped fund new websites and help people retool to go into e-commerce and other places to look at those new sales and revenue streams. And we certainly have advisors to help you do that. And it's a great starting point. And that kind of goes into a future point of retooling. So I'll get to that in a moment. Another good point is take advantage of government tax holidays and deferments for tax. I know a lot of governments are doing this, and you know, I think even as individuals, we're taking advantage of it. So now is a really, really good time to do that. Another thing is maybe look for some outside support, other programs, charities, donors, family. You know, if your business is really essential to, you know, your way of life and what you do, look for others for help. You know, it's a good time to say, you know, hey, my business is vital. I want to keep the doors open. I want to keep people employed, and I want to grow. We're all looking towards, you know, that growth stage. So think creatively about where you can borrow if you need to, outside of traditional lenders. Another point is liquidate non-essential assets. Think about what you can get rid of in order to successfully service your loan. You know, it's really, really important to keep current with your credit. But so if there are some assets that, you know, maybe you've been looking at getting rid of, or some things that aren't essential to the business, maybe reducing some of the stock in a retail business to free up some cash that you don't necessarily need, looking at that stock turnover. And that's an important thing to look at now, is think to get yourself some cash flow, to get some income. And another point is be realistic. It's really, really important for you to think hard about where you really are in terms of the business and what you see really happening. A lot of people are frustrated. I think a lot of people are in a position now where they've got not only an economic issue, but maybe, you know, there's cyclones and there's other things, and it looks like the world is coming at them. You know, trying to keep your head up is a really, really hard time right now to keep positive. But it's also important to stay realistic about what might happen and what the future might look like. And as I made this point before, every penny counts. Leave no dollar behind. It's kind of like a soldier on the field. Don't leave any dollars on the field if you can. Try to save as much as you can. Try to you know, preserve every penny. So thinking about that, you know, working with the local advisor, taking advantage of BusinessLink resources, taking advantage of expertise within the business, within your family and your community, it's really, really important. Okay. All right. Just a couple of quick things. You know, a lot of business owners carry a lot of debt. They're juggling multiple balances, interest rates, payment due dates, and it can be quite a bit of a hassle, especially in the time of crisis. So, you know, really think through these kind of financial statements. Get your finance in order. You know, get your financial statements together. Talk to a good advisor. Really think about what your debt obligations are. Think about consolidating debt. Bundle things together, and get creative. So, yeah, this is how you can prepare yourself, you know, for the long term, is getting your clear picture ready now and tightening up as you can. Okay, can everybody see that next slide?
Yes, it's all good.
Okay, great, excellent. So the next thing I want to talk about is a bit on retooling. This is about diversification. So reviewing your current sales and customers for new forms of revenue. So a couple of examples that we have from people who've taken their current business model and modified it in order to pay their debt obligations is you know, a catering business in Fiji that did weddings, big events, obviously, and that was restricted under COVID-19. So they looked at delivering meals. They looked at how they could deliver takeout, things like that. And they had a commercial kitchen, and they had employees, and they had supply, and they just needed to think creatively about how to get sales. So that's these are the kind of things that you can do, is to think creatively about what you can do, what can you deliver. Mama's Life is on the slide. I think it's a great example of a company pivoting, within the market and moving from creating sanitary products to masks. I believe they made masks in Vanuatu for that market, which is great. They had the facility, they had the manufacturing, and they had the business expertise to be able to do that. I think they're one of the incubees in the incubator VLab, which is a great new innovative place in Vanuatu that's helping these entrepreneurs to develop these sorts of things, which is excellent. Another great example is to maybe tap into a new customer base that you didn't think about. Substituting some of your inputs for domestic supply. If you're having trouble getting imported goods in, looking at domestic supply as a substitution, moving sales online, marketing online. And now is also another good time to upgrade your systems. A lot of people use out-of-date systems, out-of-date bookkeeping, accounting. Now's a good time to look at those systems. Business Link offers a lot of benefit and subsidies and things like that, and a lot of expertise locally to help you upgrade those systems. Now's the time, because that'll also help you get a really, really clear picture of where you are and help you become more efficient over time. Small businesses tend to rely on speed and flexibility to react to changing condition, and keeping paper-based ledgers and records and that sort of thing, even in basic electronic spreadsheets, just doesn't provide that kind of up-to-date information that you might need to make effective decisions. So, we need to upskill. We need to upscale our technology and to reach out and find these new tools. And obviously being cost effective. I mean, people don't have a lot of extra cash right now. So, but taking advantage of Business Link is a great time to take on some new technology, to look at your old systems, look at how you're doing things, and maybe become a bit more efficient. So I believe we're going to look at the survey responses.
Yeah, that's right. So we've got quite a few people joining us today, Paul, from all over the place. We've got about 27 people here in this webinar, and we've got 18 responses on our survey so far. If you haven't done it already, please do click on the link in the chat box. And there's only two very brief questions there to answer. So we've got quite a variety of people from all over the Pacific. We've got 42% from Fiji today, 10.5% from Samoa, 21.1% from Vanuatu. We've got a small percentage, 5.3% from Papua New Guinea, and we've got 15% from New Zealand, and we've got a few people joining us, or one person joining us from Australia today as well. And then the second question that we had today is do you have current loans, and if so, have the repayments been affected by the COVID-19 crisis? 45% have answered yes, 35% have said no, and 20% say it does not apply.
Yeah, it's I think in this modern world, I think a lot of people used to work on a simple cash basis, and a lot of people do. But debt is a great tool for businesses, and a lot of people do carry debt now as a business tool. Obviously it's something to be negotiated. What's going to work best for your business, and yes, I think almost everybody is affected by COVID-19, and certainly your debt obligation is going to be affected right alongside every other aspect. And because it's something that's that you owe, that's external to the business, and you're dealing with large banks and creditors, it's really stressful, and it can be one of the primary sources of stress, I think, in a lot of people in their individual lives and in their business lives is debt, and managing that debt. So obviously, programs like Business Link are set up to help people work through that and to get some relief. But obviously we sit outside the banks, but I think a lot of our expertise in our network of experts. You know, it helps you work through that, helps you both prepare for finance and to manage that finance effectively. So I obviously encourage everybody to go and talk to our huge network. It's a great time to think about what the impact of COVID-19 is on your loans and debt, and to seek help. It's a great thing. But right now, I'll just kind of get into maybe some of the other questions and answers if we have some in the interim period.
We don't have any questions yet, but I do encourage everyone, if you have any questions for Paul, please type them in the chat box. We'll stop for another quick Q&A session at the end of the webinar, but if you think of anything around what Paul has been discussing today and you'd like to ask him a question, please do feel free to put it in the chat box, and we'll come to him at about 2:50.
Oh, that's great. Excellent. Okay, super. Okay. Can everybody see that next slide? Can you see that next slide?
It seems to be a little bit frozen, so I can't see half of it. Maybe go to the slide, go back to the previous slide and come back again. No, it's still half frozen, so I can see half of the other slide and the other half of your new one. Yeah.
Let's see if we can try that again.
Yeah, that's all good now.
Okay, great. So now's a good time to sit down and review your loans and credit. You know, I like this infographic because it shows the stress of the borrower, which I think a lot of people have. You know, they have a lot of stress around business finance and business loans. And they, you know, a lot of people think there's a lot of perception that loans and banking isn't for them, that they don't have options. They're not equipped to deal with it. There's a variety of finance in the market, and there's a lot of products, and it's confusing. You know, what is going to be best for you? You know, can I afford it? You know, walking into a big bank is very intimidating. Bankers can be intimidating, and it's a good time to think about what your options are in terms of products. Understanding, you know, reviewing your current loans and credit, you know, looking at the terms of your loan, you know, looking at, you know, all the aspects of your loans now is a really good time to review this, because it may have a big impact on how you survive. It may have a big impact on what you can do next in terms of your access to finance. You know, some of the important questions, you know, we should be asking ourselves, I think, as small businesses is, what is our relationship with our banks? If I have a you know, a current loan with a bank, how long have I been with that bank? You know, what's the current status of my loans? Am I current? Am I up to date with my loans? You know, do I have a history of strong repayment? Do I have a long history of multiple products with a bank? Do I have savings? Do I have checking? Do I have business banking? Do I have credit cards? Do I have lines of credit? Do I have any wholesale loans? Do I have working capital, equipment finance, leasing? There are all these different types of loans. And if you have multiple loans and you have multiple loans with one bank, now is a good time to assess what that relationship is with that bank. You're an important person for that bank. And because of that, you have some power. So now is a good time, especially if you're feeling stressed about your loans and to talk about your financial position. It's okay to go and talk to your banker. It's okay to go and talk to a personal banker about your situation. You know, if you're a strong borrower, now is the time to renegotiate. You know, I think even personally, my partner and I have looked at our mortgage rates, and a lot of banks are lowering interest rates right now, and they're really incentivizing new borrowers to come in, because, you know, banks are a business themselves and they have products that they sell. The important thing is not to default, it's to discuss. You know, the first thing you may want to think about is rescheduling loans, and to thinking about if you can change the terms of your loans to put yourself in a better position to repay them. yeah, the important thing is to know that you're a consumer. You have some rights as a consumer. And I think a lot of times people think about themselves as, banking as a privilege, but it's not a privilege, it's a product. It's a product like any other. And as a consumer, you get to choose what that product is and how much you pay for it. And banks, obviously they're equipped to make money. And now's a good time, if you're a strong borrower, to discuss that relationship, to think about those loans, think about the terms. Obviously, banks don't want you to naturally default. That doesn't do them any good. People think about collateral and that sort of thing, and collateral is important, but banks don't want your collateral. I'll just be quite honest with you, they don't want your collateral. Collateral creates all kinds of problems for banks. They have to liquidate that sort of thing. They have to depreciate that. It's a bit of a hassle. So if you can renegotiate your loans at this point and to think about and have a discussion with your banker about what is possible. And a lot of banks are offering some good credit terms, flexible credit terms, renegotiation, rescheduling, different loans, giving interest rate holidays, payment holidays, interest-only periods, things like that. Take advantage of those things. Those are important, and those are your rights as a consumer, to look at those and to think about what your options are. So if you're a strong borrower, renegotiate. Think about rescheduling. Another good point here is what I go back to the beginning, is that you really want to think about your financial position. You really want to think about the more information that you have as a business and as a borrower, the better positioned you'll be to negotiate. So if you really understand what's going on in your business and you're projecting out, you're thinking about income, you're thinking about sales, that's a really, really good time to present that to your banker, because you've already done the analysis. You've already done the thinking. You're coming to them with proactive measures, and they appreciate that. They'll think very hard about extending credit, if you've got a plan in mind. So extend payment terms, taking advantage of bank holidays, interest repayments, and having good information when you step in the door will put you in a strong position, will put you on the front foot as opposed to on your heels. Can everybody see that slide?
It's a little bit frozen again. Oh no, it's come back. It's come back to life. All good.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so just going back to that last point, it's important to know what to ask for. It's important when you go into the bank and renegotiate loans is to know what to ask for. If you know what your current credit terms are, you can go and renegotiate those credit terms and know exactly what you're looking for them to do for you, and presenting a plan to them as to how to meet your debt obligations is really important. So just to talk about that a little bit more is retooling your finance. It's important that you don't feel locked into your loans. You may be able to reschedule them. And rescheduling is a great way for a bank to keep you as an active customer and not to default on your loans, but also to keep you as a long-term customer. Banks are reliant on strong portfolios, loan portfolios. That's what makes them money. Those are what they call, those are their lending assets, and that's what it's what they consider it. They consider it their assets. The other thing is loan officers, like your bankers and the officers that made your loan. Their incentives are not just on making the loan in the first place. Their incentives are also on a strong portfolio for themselves. So, the person that you have a relationship at the bank has a strong incentive to see you perform, to see your loan perform, i.e. see it repaid back on time with all of the interest and all of the fees and everything else. So they have a strong interest in seeing that loan continue and to continue to perform for them as an asset. So think of that yourself. I mean, that's how the bank sees you, and that's how you should see that for the bank. So keep that in mind when you go in to renegotiate or to reschedule. They want to see that loan to continue to perform. And again, I touched on this a little bit earlier. Your loan is not a privilege, it's a product that you purchased. and you have rights on that product, and you certainly can choose to renegotiate that product or go somewhere else to get a new product. You are a consumer. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was set up in the United States as an example. Consumer financial protection. You're a consumer of finance, and it can, think of yourself in that way. I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier. Is review your current terms and structures. Are those terms and structures working for you? Is the term of your loan suitable? If you're a seasonal business, is that loan still working for you on a seasonal way? As you start to look in the ebbs and flows of your business and your cash flow, sometimes loans don't match with that seasonality. And you may want to reconsider that seasonality, especially in these dips that we're having now. Now's a good time to think about the impact of the terms of your loan on your business itself, on the process of your business. The other thing is term finance versus credit lines. A lot of people don't know the difference between term finance and credit lines. Having some flexible credit lines in terms of being able to draw down on some of those flexible credit lines is important, especially in places, in times like now, where you're looking at cash flow, you're looking at getting money into the bank, you're looking at paying your bills and your obligations in the short run in order to get income coming in later. To think about those credit lines and think about, if you have term finance for a fixed period, or if you have a credit line that's more flexible, and to take advantage of that credit line, especially now. Another important point is to scan the market. Think about what other banks are offering. If you're in a position of power, and a lot of people aren't, a lot of people think they're not, is to look around at other banks. What are other banks offering? There's a lot of products in the market. Now may be the time to look somewhere else for finance. I know that a lot of people don't think that's an option, and it may not be, because they're delayed on their loans, and getting another loan seems impossible. In a lot of cases, it might be. But if you're not there yet, you might want to think about going to another bank or going to and getting other credit. At the very least, as a consumer, it's important to know what the other products are. Even if you don't plan on buying them, it's good to know what they are, especially business loans. Look at what others are offering. It's okay to go in and ask. It's okay to shop around, and we should be, especially right now. So even for personal credit, it's a good time to think about that. Another thing we might want to think about is going down market. And what I mean by that is looking at microfinance and microfinance banks in alternative forms, not just commercial banks, but other kinds of credit providers, finance companies, microfinance groups, not-for-profits that do lending. They may not have the best rates, and sometimes they don't. A lot of times they don't have the best rates, and they don't have the best terms, but they may give you a bit more flexibility. And they may be that lifeline, even just a small amount, to get you through a period. It's really, really tricky, but it's good to just investigate what's out there. Understand what microfinance is all about, understand what the terms are, understand what the interest rates are, and to look more broadly than just the commercial banks, is to go down market into microfinance, even small loans. A lot of microfinance now is looking at scaling up into small business loans, SME loans. South Pacific Business Development in Samoa, Vanuatu, and Fiji is a great organization, and they do really, really good lending, but they're scaling some of their borrowers up that were previously microfinance borrowers. They're scaling them up into commercial SME loans of bigger and bigger amounts. So if you had a relationship with them before, maybe that's something you can step up into at this point. But it's an option, and it's something that you maybe want to think about is going down market. Another thing to think about is hybridizing your credit. Can you spread your credit across multiple banks or multiple companies to get the best deal? For an example, business might look at leasing, for equipment and for new cars and other things, and equipment for the business, and then taking out other like working capital loans from another bank that offers, again, better terms. A lot of banks like to package loans together because they want to keep all of your loans with them. But that may not be the best thing for you. You may want to think about spreading yourself around, and even if it's for very small loans, interest rates are really important. They are a cost of doing business. They are a cost of credit. in interest rates, you should be negotiating for the absolute best and looking around the market to find out what the best deals are, and maybe hybridizing a little bit and mixing it up. Another thing is to look at new credit schemes, wage subsidies, government support programs. There may be some new credit opportunities that are coming up from governments and from banks, not-for-profits and things like that. Take advantage of those, understand what those are. Maybe blend credit, private credit, with government support. So if you look at cash flow, you say, well, I can get some government support here, I can get some money from my family, maybe I can draw down on the credit line, or I can renegotiate with my bank. All of those things can come together to keep your business alive. And that's really what we're talking about today, is keeping your business solvent. It's really important to think about all your options and combine them as necessary. Another thing is go co-op. Credit unions. I used to work for the World Council of Credit Unions and did a lot of programs for them over the years, and a great group. They represent all the a lot of the credit unions in the world, in credit union associations. Credit unions are great. They're member organizations. They have a lot of flexibility. They're usually community-based, which is good. And they could be an option for you. A lot of community-based banks, credit unions, lendings and savings clubs, those are all going to be in your community. They may not have the most money, but they're an option, and they're an option outside of commercial banks. So thinking about cooperative finance, thinking about lending and savings clubs, that might be an option for you. So just something to think about. Some good examples out there of credit relief and government support. I just got a COVID-19 relief package from Fiji Development Bank today. This is for COVID-19 affected relief relief packages for customers. They've got the Reserve Bank of Fiji has the Disaster Rehabilitation and Containment Facility. So that's a great facility. Helps people mitigate disaster, helps them recover. A SME Credit Guarantee Scheme helps businesses access that guarantee for commercial banks for loans. Interest-only repayments, repayment holidays, waivers of rescheduling and inspection fees. So, banks may charge you a fee to reschedule your loans. And that is a cost of doing business, but you can look at waivers for that. You can look at negotiating down those fees so you can get your loans rescheduled. So that's something that Fiji Development Bank is offering right now, which is great. Then I was also looking at the interest rates are looking at coming down from the Reserve Bank of Fiji and Fiji Development Bank. So they're looking at renegotiating and bringing down interest rates for the current period, which is great. So, but I'll put some links to some resources after the webinar is over, and we'll send those around with the webinar resources. So I'll put together some good links for everybody, and I'll include that in the presentation. So. Can everybody see that next slide?
Yes, it's pretty good.
Okay, great. Excellent. Next thing I want to talk about is kind of preparing for future success. I know it's really, really difficult right now to think about, what the future might hold, looking past the current crisis, looking past your current cash constrictions, looking past your current a financial condition, which is probably pretty bleak. I mean, it's really, really challenging right now. It's hard to think about the future. It's hard to think about growth. It's hard to think about, business opportunity. When, sometimes it seems like the sky is falling. It's really, really tough. But now is a great time to think ahead, especially if you can get through the current period. Now's a good time to plan for the future. And some of the things you may want to think about is your equity in your business. How much equity do you really have? What is the true value of your business? Do you understand how much your business might be worth? And would it be time to maybe think about taking on partners to help salvage the business? You could look at taking on an equity partner to help save the business. It's a lot of business owners. This is their baby. This is what they do. They've had the business for a long time, and they don't want to share it. But if it's the point where you may lose the business, or you may have to take on a partner, you may want to consider that partner. They can bring in some extra cash. that can help relieve some of the cash flow constrictions in exchange for some equity, which may salvage the business. So it's something to think about, an equity partner, a business partner that can bring in some extra cash. So it might be time to think about that too, is look at the equity in your business and how much it really might be worth. Obviously, you want to go into a situation like that on your front foot. You want to be forward thinking about that equity. You want to think about investment in a positive way, not in a negative, on my back foot, have to take it out so I can close my doors kind of way. But it may be a lifeline, that's something to consider. So do think about the equity in your business and how much your business might be worth. As you step forward and you continue, to service your debt and service your obligations, it might be time to review and renew your loans, either with your current bank or with another bank for better rates. As you get through the current period and you feel like you're a bit more progressive, you feel like you've come through the black hole of economic difficulty, now might be the time to renegotiate your loans or to look at different loans and to feel like you're on the front foot again. Is to look around again. Again, investment might be an option. You consider both institutional and outside investors, bringing in some equity, maybe some finance along with it to help relieve some of the cash flow issues or some of the current debt that you have. Equity investors can come in and help relieve some of that debt, help free up some working capital for growth, for new investment, for new equipment, growth into new markets, maybe going offshore, maybe doing some exporting. Impact investing and investing in general in a business is a huge topic and really could be a topic in and of itself. But it is something people might want to look at into the future, is looking at investors and how to save that, how to save your business with an outside investor. Another option is maybe to go up market. Look at bigger banks, look at bigger investors. As you're a stronger borrower and you've come through this difficulty, you may be in a position to go up to a bigger bank and get better interest rates and better terms. So that's something to think about when we're through all of this, is to going up market, not down market. So yeah, that might be something to think about as well. And really the important thing, two important things is again, be realistic about everything. Think about what you're doing. Try to make the best choices for you and your family. Make the best choices for you in your business and to stay in business. And the other thing is be your own cheerleader. I've always been a cheerleader for small business. It's one of the things I'm most passionate about, and I've worked around the world with a lot of small businesses, and it's one of my favorite things to do is work with small businesses. I think, it's so interesting. The diversity is terrific. The quality of people is terrific, and it's the engine of growth for all these economies. And it's something that Business Link has been very passionate about. It's something I'm personally passionate about, and I hope we can be a source of assistance. I hope the advisors that we partner with can be a source of assistance, and I do hope your banks and your financiers can be a source of assistance for you. I certainly hope so. And the important thing is that, again, also be your own cheerleader. You're the business owner. You're in the best position to negotiate for yourself. You're in the best position to cheerlead your business and to see it through this difficult time. So yeah, it is a challenging time, and I certainly hope the webinar today and some of my thoughts have been helpful. Thank you.
Great, Paul. Thanks so much for such a comprehensive presentation. We've got a few questions from our webinar attendees today. Let me just scroll back here through our chat box. So I think you might have talked a little bit about what governments in the Pacific are doing to support borrowers, and you did mention that you will be sending out some links to some of those as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll definitely share some links on some good positive examples. I mean, obviously, I think banks across the Pacific, there's a lot of banks and finance companies. They all might have different packages of support, but I'll try to pull out some good examples and send those around as well from multiple countries in the Pacific and what banks are doing to help their borrowers get through the current period.
Awesome. Okay, so and then I've got a lovely message here from Julianne Terry of Tockstreet Consulting in PNG, and she writes that in PNG we met with a candidate for BLP support from ourselves, Tockstreet Consulting and Beach Accounting, to assist a lady business owner who is in a hole so deep she cannot see the sky. She encompasses every element this webinar speaks of. She needs help in both financial planning and a business plan or marketing space. And as two BLP agents, we are working together to address this together. Some nice feedback of how the Business Advisor Network is helping these businesses.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, that's great. BusinessLink has done a lot of, through the advisors, done a lot of finance facilitation. So we've helped businesses prepare for loans, get their books in order, get government contracts, prepare for finance. Obviously we have both accountants and advisors to help people prepare that. And we are looking at a number of bank relationships and that sort of thing to help people directly go to banks and prepare for that finance. So it's great. I've worked on a lot of finance facilitation and finance programs over the years and with a lot of commercial banks. And I think that the advisors that we work with are terrific, from business coaches all the way through to accountants and advisors and even impact investing. So there's a full range there for people. And to see advisors working together to assist the businesses, it warms my heart. It really does. It's a fantastic thing. Yeah,
it is. It's great. On that same sort of avenue as well, I have another question here. Volahiga Agency. I am a new business and I don't have capital. What's your advice for a business like mine that has zero capital?
If they're a new business, they're a startup business, it's challenging. A lot of businesses are self-financed. They're self-funded to start with. They get money from family and things like that to get going. There are some, I think, the Fiji government was offering grants for young entrepreneurs. There's incubators and that sort of thing. Getting initial capital for a business is really challenging, especially now. Everything is quite constricted, but again, you have to be a little bit creative about where you can get access to capital. Startup loans are very difficult, if not non-existent. So, looking around for grants, looking around at family, looking at business partners, incubators, people who are helping young entrepreneurs and early entrepreneurs get going is probably the best option.
Great, thanks, Paul. Do we have any other questions from anybody? If you do, please pop them in the chat box now, and I can ask Paul. Paul, do you have, while we're waiting for any other questions, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with everyone today?
Yeah, I think my final thoughts are, BusinessLink is we've had relationships with banks and discussions with banks about how better to prepare borrowers for them. A lot of our advisors are doing the very steps needed to prepare people to access finance, but a lot of people are quite intimidated by it. And I think, for us, we're looking at setting up a, kind of a finance portal, maybe within BusinessLink that piggybacks on our current portal to give people information, to give people, some preparation, to think about what banks are offering, think about what banks are requiring. What is your collateral position? What are the common questions banks are going to ask, so people are prepared before they go in the door. I think that's something that we're thinking about doing in a serious way, and something we're already working on. So I hope to have that live and running, so people can access the finance portal in the coming months.
Awesome. Okay, so we have one question's come through. Can we apply for the BLP subsidy point of sale or customer service? From Mansoor Ali, maybe you can clarify, Mansoor, what exactly you mean by, is it point of sale customers? Is that what you mean?
Is that point of sale systems or sales systems? Maybe inventory systems.
Yes.
Yeah, it depends on what they're asking for, but yeah, helping people upskill and using technology and to look at point of sale systems. Yeah, and I think that's something we have supported in the past. Yeah, and including people looking at tax compliance and other things like that for VAT monitoring systems in Fiji, and there's a new system to be developed in Samoa as well, where people are going to have to be tax compliant via their point of sale systems. it's a pinch point for people, and it's new technology that's having to be implemented.
Well, I don't know if you can see that. Paul is actually just asking if that's for hardware as well, or only software.
We don't purchase hardware via subsidies. We really just focus on supporting services. So those are professional fees to help set that up. We don't buy computers or trucks or equipment, unfortunately. That may be something to talk to the banks about, or to business partners, etc., as to how to purchase those systems. Unfortunately, we can't buy hardware. We have done some subsidies on subscriptions for like accounting software and that sort of thing, which is kind of a new tool, but it's an online tool, and it's software-based. It's not hardware-based.
Okay, great. So if you do have any other questions that pop into your head this afternoon or even tomorrow, please do send me an email to media@businesslinkpacific.com. That should be showing on your screen now. If you have any questions for Paul that perhaps you haven't thought of yet and you think of later, I can forward those questions on to him for him to answer. So thank you all so much for joining us today. Paul, thank you so much for lending your expertise and advice on this very complicated and complex topic, and also very much at the top of everybody's priority list at the moment. We really appreciate you taking the time to do that with us today. Just to let everybody know that if you did have to step out halfway through, or there's somebody else you think could benefit from this webinar today, we will be sending out a link to the recording after the webinar, so you can share it with whoever might be interested, or you can rewatch some parts of it. We'll also share with you some of the resources that Paul has talked about, links to certain resources, and his actual presentation slides, which has some really great bullet points there of steps to take in terms of getting your finances in order. Next week, we'll be hosting yet another BLP webinar, same time, same place, Thursday, 28th of May at 2 p.m. And this one will be on the topic of reaching new markets through social inclusion, to be hosted by our Gender and Social Inclusion Advisor, Cara Klassen. We'll be sending out the invite for that webinar tomorrow, and you'll be receiving the link via email next week. If you have any other further questions, or if you would like us to present on a certain topic, please do get in touch with us. You can contact me, contact myself or the rest of the team via media@businesslinkpacific.com. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll see you all next week.
Thanks, everybody.